My name is Alex Simalabwi. I'm currently Executive Secretary of the Global Water Partnership in Southern Africa. And at the same time, I also head the Global Water Partnership Africa Coordination Unit, which is coordinated by GWP Southern Africa. I also have other responsibilities. I'm the Global Coordinator for Climate Change for the Global Water Partnership, and that's a responsibility that I oversee the planning and the strategic direction of GWP worldwide, is planning processes around climate resilience. So in short, basically this is that's what my role. So I've got three roles: Executive Secretary, Head of the Africa Coordination Unit in Global Water Partnership, and of course I'm the Global Coordinator for Climate Resilience around the world. This SADC dialogue is focusing on fostering regional value chains and job creation through what is called the Water, Energy, Food Nexus approach. In 2015, SADC heads of state adopted the SADC industrialization agenda. And this agenda is supposed to help SADC economies to grow SADC countries to grow their economies by industrializing and developing specific value chains to develop their factories and industries. One of the key things about the SADC industrialization agenda is that for it to be effectively implemented, water resources is key, because water is a key enabler for development of industries. Water is a key enabler for development of agriculture processing and agro-based industries. Energy is very, very critical. So what this conference that has been convened by SADC Water Division in partnership and with support from the Global Water Partnership is trying to focus on is to see how can water be an enabler to help develop some of these value chains as a means towards industrialization. So the key objective really is about trying to see how a water, energy, food nexus, or an integrated approach around addressing these interconnected issues of water, energy, and food security, how that integrated approach called the Nexus on water, energy, and food can help to be used as an approach to advance some of the value chains in the SADC region. So the stakeholders have been drawn from all over the region, 15 countries, SADC countries, at very senior level, from different sectors, from energy sectors, from agriculture, from water sectors, and others from the private sector, including international and regional cooperating partners. And the overall focus is around, okay, we want to help the SADC heads of state and the SADC countries industrialize, create jobs. Water is the key. Let's look at these three sectors that are very, very critical: water, energy, and agriculture. Focusing on these three sectors and trying to foster an integrated approach. How can we foster the regional value chains that can help to advance the SADC regional industrialization agenda and create jobs ultimately? That's what really this purpose is, the purpose of this workshop is about. One thing that is very clear, people know that water, energy, and food are interconnected. Especially in this region in Southern Africa and Africa in general, a lot of energy comes from hydropower, from dams. So there's a direct relationship between the rainfall that falls in the rivers, the water in the levels in the rivers, and the ultimate energy that is generated, because to generate energy you need the water to be flowing to drive the turbines and produce the energy. These issues have been dealt with separately. When people begin to address water, they are looking at water supply and drinking water. When people look at food security, they're just looking at providing the inputs that are required for production of food, for instance, agro inputs, fertilizers, chemicals, and perhaps also fostering some of the irrigation systems, without really looking at the resource in terms of water. How much water is there? And is that water going to be available tomorrow, the next day, and in a few years from now? There has been a silo approach in the development, the planning, and the management of water resources vis-a-vis its interconnection with other sectors. So having realized that these two things, these three key sectors are very, very interconnected to water, they have to be dealt with at the same time. Because if you start developing your infrastructure around water storage and dams without looking at how much water you have, what's going to happen when the water levels are very low? And also with climate change, it becomes even more complicated because with most countries experiencing frequent droughts in the SADC region and Africa as a whole, we have to pay attention to what's happening to water. When we're planning, making plans on energy, when we're planning, making plans on agriculture production and output. Because these things are interconnected, and ultimately they are all interconnected to the overall economy of the country and growth and creation of jobs. So the nexus is basically, of these three sectors, is basically putting a spotlight to say, hey guys, let's find a way to make sure that in the planning, the management, and the development of water resources or development of energy and agriculture, these things are interconnected, and let's take all those considerations into account. A very good example for Africa, for Southern Africa, is the biggest water storage that we know in the region, which is the Kariba Dam, shared by Zambia and Zimbabwe. And we know in 2015 that when the water levels reduced so much because of frequency of droughts, because of climate change in the Kariba Dam, there was an energy crisis. And people call it an energy crisis, and we know that that's not an energy crisis, it's a water crisis. And that crisis is still there today, because the water levels are still going down. Despite the rainfall that is there, if you look at the period between 2050 and now, the water levels in the Zambezi River have been going down. And you can go to the Zambezi River Authority, that is the custodian of management of the Kariba Dam, they will give you the records. The records are still there. So we cannot ignore what's happening to water resources when trying to solve energy issues. And energy issues, of course, are intrinsically linked to what's happening to the overall economy. In Zambia, 10,000 youths lost their jobs because of the energy shortages in the mines, because the mines did not have enough energy to be able to operate at full capacity. So they had to cut off production. 10,000 youths lost their jobs. Zambia spent $480 million unplanned for, unbudgeted for, to import emergency power because the country needed to go on. So these interconnections are very, very critical, that the water, energy, food nexus helps to put a spotlight to say, hey guys, let's focus on these three things and make sure that as we plan and as we try to grow our economies, with this concerted effort around making sure that the synergies are recognized and also the optimizing on the opportunities through investments in these three key sectors. The SADC dialogue now that is being convened right now with SADC and cooperating partners and the support of global water partnership is part of the bigger puzzle. The bigger puzzle is really how do we enhance industrialization in the region for job creation. What we hope for from this is to generate ideas from practitioners. We've got very senior people coming from all the 15 SADC countries here. Is to generate ideas based on their own experiences, their own circumstances, their own country circumstances, and also based on their sectors. Because you have people from energy, from agriculture, from food security, and from water ministries and others as well. Is to come up with some concrete recommendations that SADC and member states and the region can consider to take forward in terms of to ensure that they can implement, they can take this integrated approach looking at these three key sectors, water, energy, and food, called the Nexus. We can come up with recommendations that they can consider in their countries as they try to implement, to foster value chains that to advance industrialization for job creation. So that's the first thing we're trying to come up with. One, key recommendations, very clear, concise recommendations. How do we ensure that working in an integrated approach, looking at these three sectors, water, energy, and agriculture, we can advance the value chains that have been identified in the SADC industrialization agenda to create jobs? That's the first set of recommendations. The second set of recommendations is to come up with very concrete ideas, project ideas, because ultimately it's nice to plan and talk, but if you don't actually develop the projects and package them and get the investment coming in, you're not going to develop them. You need finances to develop energy, you need finances for agriculture as well, and also finances to improve water security. And to do that, you have to prepare bankable projects that can attract funding, not only from the national resources, treasury, but also from international and other sources such as the private sector and other climate funds. You have to prepare bankable projects. This conference should come up with some concrete project ideas that recognize the three sectors, water, energy, and food, that can be further developed with cooperation with other partners and then be implemented. There are already a number of projects that have been identified through other SADC planning processes. They exist. There's so many plans that exist. Many countries have project ideas. What this conference is looking at is to say, okay, fine. What other projects or what of the existing projects are really key in promoting recognize the synergies between the three key sectors? And that is what this conference is trying to come about. So in summary, recommendations on how the water, food, energy nexus can foster value chains for industrialization and job creation. 2 very concrete ideas, project ideas that can be developed, integrating the 3 key sectors, water, food, and energy, and can be further developed for further investment and implementation.